Poor Waitress accidentally sat on the Vampire King's throne. Everyone panicked, but he smiled. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The Great Hall of Night Vale Palace was silent in a way that made the air feel heavy and cold. Hundreds of guests filled the enormous chamber, yet not a single voice dared to rise above a whisper. Crystal chandeliers burned with pale golden light above a sea of elegant figures dressed in black silk and deep crimson velvet. To any ordinary human it might have looked like the most luxurious gala in the country. But there was something strange about the crowd. No one touched the food. No laughter echoed across the marble floor. And every movement carried a quiet grace that felt almost unnatural. At the far end of the hall stood a throne carved from a single slab of black stone. The throne was ancient. Its surface was etched with symbols so old that even many vampires no longer remembered their meaning. This was the seat of power for the ruler of every vampire clan across North America. The throne of King Adrian Nightvale. For centuries there had been one rule that every creature in the palace understood. No one touched the throne except the king himself. Breaking that rule was not simply disrespect. It was treason. And treason was punished without mercy. Yet at this very moment, a young human woman sat on that throne. Olivia Hayes did not look like someone who belonged in a palace filled with ancient predators. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the plain black uniform of a temporary waitress hired for the evening event. Her shoes were cheap. Her hands still trembled slightly from carrying heavy trays across the enormous ballroom all night. She had slipped away only for a moment of rest after hours of exhausting work. Olivia believed she had discovered an empty room hidden behind a tall pair of carved doors. The chamber looked quiet and peaceful compared to the overwhelming noise of the party outside. In the center of the room stood a large chair made of dark stone. To her tired eyes it looked like nothing more than an unusually dramatic seat placed there for decoration. She had no idea that the chair was the throne of the most powerful vampire alive. Olivia lowered herself onto the cold stone surface with a tired sigh and closed her eyes for just a second. The moment she sat down, the entire palace seemed to hold its breath. Then the doors of the hall burst open. One vampire after another rushed into the chamber. Their pale faces were filled with shock and rising panic. Gasps echoed across the marble floor. A noble woman dropped the glass in her hand, and it shattered loudly against the stone tiles. Guards reached for their weapons as if they had just witnessed a crime that could start a war. Because in their eyes that was exactly what had happened. A human waitress was sitting on the throne of the Vampire King. And according to every ancient law that should have meant only one thing. She would die before the king returned. But none of them expected what was about to happen next. The great hall remained frozen in stunned silence as Olivia Hayes sat on the ancient throne of black stone, unaware that every pair of eyes in the chamber was fixed on her with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The guards had not yet moved. The nobles had not yet spoken again. For a moment it felt as if time itself had stopped inside Nightvale Palace. Olivia slowly opened her eyes, still thinking she had only found a quiet place to rest after the longest shift of her life. Her feet ached. Her shoulders burned from carrying trays filled with heavy crystal glasses for hours. She let out a tired breath and leaned back slightly against the cold stone behind her. She did not understand why the room had suddenly become so quiet. Just a few hours earlier her night had begun in a very different place far away from this silent chamber. That afternoon Olivia Hayes had been standing in the small kitchen of the diner where she worked during the day shift. The diner sat beside an old highway outside the city, a place where truck drivers stopped for coffee and pancakes before long drives across the state. Olivia had been finishing a late lunch order when her phone vibrated in the pocket of her apron. The message came from a temporary event agency that sometimes offered extra work for service staff. The message explained that a last-minute opening had appeared for waitresses at a private gala in the city that evening. The pay would be 3 times what she usually earned in a full day at the diner. Olivia stared at the message for several seconds before replying yes. She needed the money more than she needed sleep. Her mother had been sick for nearly a year, and the hospital bills arrived every month like a storm cloud that refused to leave. Olivia had already taken a second job cleaning offices during weekends, but it was still not enough. So when the agency sent her the address of the event, she did not hesitate. Nightvale Palace. The name alone sounded like something from an old storybook, but the directions led her to the hills above the city where the wealthiest families owned enormous estates hidden behind tall iron gates. When Olivia arrived that evening, she had to show her identification 3 different times before the guards allowed her through the final gate. The palace itself rose from the hillside like a fortress built from dark stone and pale marble. Lights glowed from hundreds of tall windows. Expensive cars lined the long, curved driveway. Even before she stepped inside, Olivia felt as if she had entered a world that did not belong to ordinary people like her. Inside the palace, the event manager hurried the new wait staff into a preparation room and gave them a quick list of rules. Speak only when necessary. Move quickly but quietly. Do not interrupt the guests. And most importantly, never wander into restricted areas of the palace. Olivia nodded with the rest of the servers while tying on the black apron they gave her. The job itself seemed simple enough. Carry trays of wine. Refill glasses. Stay out of the way. But as the evening went on, Olivia noticed strange things about the guests filling the enormous ballroom. They were beautiful in a way that felt almost unreal. Their movements were graceful and silent. Their eyes watched everything with an intensity that made her uneasy. None of them touched the expensive food prepared by the kitchen staff. They only drank dark red wine from thin crystal glasses. Olivia told herself that rich people often behaved in unusual ways. Still, the feeling of being watched never left her. By the time the gala reached its busiest moment, her legs felt like they might collapse beneath her. The noise of the crowd echoed through the halls of the palace, while music drifted through the air from a distant orchestra. When another server accidentally bumped into her near the ballroom doors, Olivia seized the chance to step away for just a moment. She slipped through a side corridor, searching for a quiet place to breathe. That was how she found the large carved doors leading into the chamber where she now sat. She had only wanted a chair. Just 1 minute of rest before returning to the chaos of the gala. She had never imagined that the chair she chose would be the throne of the most powerful vampire alive. The silence in the throne chamber did not last long. One voice finally broke through the stunned crowd. It came from an older vampire noble standing near the front of the gathering. His silver hair fell across the collar of a dark coat that looked as if it had been tailored a century ago. His eyes were cold and sharp as polished steel. "Remove the human from the throne immediately," he said in a low, commanding voice. His words carried across the chamber like a blade cutting through the air. Several guards stepped forward at once. Each of them moved with the controlled precision of trained soldiers. Their long coats brushed softly against the marble floor as they advanced toward the throne. Olivia Hayes suddenly realized that every person in the room was staring directly at her. A wave of confusion rushed through her chest. She slowly straightened her back and looked around the chamber. The faces watching her were pale and beautiful in a way that made them seem almost unreal. Their expressions held something darker than simple anger. It was fear. Not fear of her. Fear of what she had done. Olivia lifted her hands slightly in a nervous gesture. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I did not know this room was in use. I was only trying to find somewhere to sit for a moment." Her voice echoed gently against the stone walls. For a moment no one answered. The noble with the silver hair stared at her as if she had just confessed to setting the palace on fire. "Do you have any idea where you are sitting, human?" he asked. Olivia glanced down at the dark stone beneath her. The surface of the chair felt colder now. Strange carved symbols twisted across the armrests like ancient writing. She shook her head slowly. "It is just a chair," she said. A ripple of shocked murmurs moved through the chamber. One of the noble women gasped softly. Another stepped backward as if the words themselves were dangerous. "Just a chair," the silver-haired noble repeated with disbelief. "That chair is the throne of King Adrian Nightvale, the ruler of every vampire clan in this country." Olivia felt the words strike her like a sudden gust of icy wind. The throne, the king, vampire clans. The strange behavior of the guests earlier in the evening suddenly made terrible sense. The pale faces, the untouched food, the eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the chandeliers. Her stomach tightened as a slow realization spread through her mind. These people were not simply wealthy aristocrats attending a private party. They were something else entirely. Something older. Something dangerous. The guards had now reached the base of the throne. One of them extended a hand toward Olivia but hesitated before touching her. His expression was tense, as if even that action might break some sacred rule. "Stand up slowly," the guard said. Olivia did not argue. She placed her hands on the cold armrests and prepared to rise from the seat. But the moment she shifted her weight, something strange happened. A faint glow flickered beneath the surface of the black stone. The carved symbols along the throne began to shine with a dim golden light. The guards froze in place. The nobles around the chamber gasped again, this time with something closer to panic. "No one touched the throne when it awakened," whispered one of the nobles from the back of the crowd. The silver-haired noble stepped forward quickly. His eyes locked onto the glowing symbols as if he had just seen something impossible. "That has not happened in centuries," he said quietly. Olivia did not understand what was happening. The glow beneath her hands pulsed once like a heartbeat. She pulled her palms away from the stone at once, but the golden light continued to spread across the surface of the throne. The chamber fell into a deeper silence than before. Every vampire in the room understood the meaning of what they were witnessing. The throne of King Adrian Nightvale was reacting to the presence of a human waitress. And according to the oldest laws of their kind, that reaction should have been impossible. The golden light spreading across the ancient throne grew brighter with every passing second, and the entire chamber seemed to tighten with silent tension, as if the palace itself had become aware of the impossible event unfolding inside its walls. Olivia Hayes stood frozen beside the throne with her hands slightly raised, as if afraid that even the smallest movement might make the situation worse. She could feel the cold air pressing against her skin and the weight of hundreds of eyes studying her every breath. The glow from the carved symbols pulsed again like a slow heartbeat echoing through the stone floor beneath her feet. One of the vampire nobles near the back of the chamber whispered a single word in disbelief. "Impossible." The silver-haired noble who had first spoken earlier stepped even closer to the throne. His sharp eyes moved carefully across the glowing runes etched into the stone. Those symbols were older than any kingdom that still existed in the modern world. They had been carved into the throne more than 6 centuries earlier, when the first Nightvale king united the scattered vampire clans under one rule. The throne was not simply a seat of power. It was a relic bound to the bloodline of the king himself. For centuries it had remained silent and cold except when its rightful ruler claimed the seat. Yet now the ancient stone was shining with golden light beneath the presence of a human waitress who had entered the palace only hours earlier. "This should not be happening," the noble murmured as his voice grew tight with unease. "The throne does not react to strangers. It recognizes only the blood of the Nightvale line." Several other vampires began to speak at once as quiet panic spread through the gathered court. One noblewoman covered her mouth as she stared at the glowing symbols. Another stepped backward as if the throne might erupt with some unknown force. The guards near Olivia exchanged uncertain glances. None of them dared to touch the throne while the ancient runes were active. The last time the throne awakened like this was long before any of them had been born. Olivia looked from face to face in growing confusion. None of their whispered words made sense to her. She had only sat down for a moment because her legs were aching from hours of work. Now the entire room was acting as if she had triggered some kind of ancient disaster. "I do not understand what is happening," she said quietly as she glanced at the glowing throne behind her. "If this seat belongs to your king, then I will leave right now. I am sorry for the trouble." She took a cautious step away from the throne, but the moment she moved, the golden light surged brighter across the stone surface. The runes along the armrests flared with sudden intensity, and a deep vibration rolled through the floor of the chamber. The palace chandeliers trembled slightly above the crowd. A few of the vampires gasped in shock. "Do not move," one of the guards said quickly as he raised a hand toward Olivia. His voice carried a note of urgency now. "The throne is responding to you. If you step away too quickly, it may react again." Olivia froze in place. The glowing symbols continued to pulse like a living heartbeat beneath the stone. The silver-haired noble stared at the throne with growing dread. The ancient laws of the vampire clans described this moment in only one forgotten passage hidden within the oldest records of their kind. The throne awakened only when it sensed something tied to the destiny of the Night Vale crown, something bound to the future of their king. The noble slowly lifted his gaze toward Olivia Hayes. A human waitress who had arrived at the palace as nothing more than hired help was now standing at the center of a mystery that none of the powerful vampires in the room could explain. And somewhere far above them in the upper levels of Night Vale Palace, the ruler of all vampire clans was returning to the throne room, without yet knowing that his ancient seat had just awakened for the first time in centuries. The golden glow from the throne did not fade. Instead, it grew deeper and steadier, as if the ancient stone had awakened from a long-forgotten sleep. The symbols carved into the armrests and along the back of the throne continued to shine with a quiet pulse that moved through the chamber like a slow rhythm. Olivia Hayes stood beside the throne without moving, afraid that even a small step might make the strange reaction worse. The guards remained frozen a few feet away from her. None of them dared to touch the throne while the runes were alive with light. Across the chamber, the gathered vampires whispered among themselves in low, urgent voices. The elegant calm that had filled the palace earlier in the evening was gone. In its place stood confusion and rising fear. The silver-haired noble continued to stare at the throne with a troubled expression. His name was Lord Victor Harrow, one of the oldest members of the Vampire Council. He had witnessed more than 3 centuries of vampire history, yet even he had never seen the throne react like this to a stranger. "The throne is responding to her presence," he said quietly, as if speaking the words aloud might somehow confirm the impossible truth. "That cannot happen unless the throne senses a connection to the royal bloodline." A younger noble stepped forward beside him. "That is absurd," she said sharply. "She is human. The throne recognizes only the blood of the Night Vale kings." Lord Harrow did not answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the glowing runes. The ancient records spoke of the throne as more than a symbol of authority. It was a relic bound to the power of the first vampire king who had forged the Night Vale dynasty centuries earlier. The throne had been created through rituals that tied it to the king and to the destiny of the vampire clans themselves. It was said that the throne could sense loyalty, power, and the hidden threads of fate. But never in the long history of the court had it awakened for a human servant. Olivia listened to the quiet arguments moving through the crowd. The words bloodline and destiny meant nothing to her. She felt as if she had stepped into the middle of a story that everyone else understood except her. Her heart beat faster as the golden light reflected across the polished marble floor. "I did not mean to cause trouble," she said softly while looking at the nobles around her. "I only needed a place to sit for a minute. If this throne belongs to your king, then please tell me what to do, and I will leave." Lord Harrow slowly lifted his gaze toward her. His sharp eyes studied her face as if searching for something hidden beneath the surface. "The throne is already reacting," he said. "That means leaving may not be so simple." Olivia frowned in confusion. "What does that mean?" Before Lord Harrow could answer, a deep sound rolled through the palace corridors outside the chamber. It was the echo of heavy doors opening somewhere within the vast halls of Night Vale Palace. The whispers among the nobles stopped at once. Every vampire in the room recognized that sound. Footsteps followed a moment later, slow and deliberate. Each step carried an authority that needed no announcement. The guards straightened at once and moved aside from the center of the chamber. Lord Harrow turned toward the entrance of the hall. "The king is returning," he said quietly. A tense silence settled over the entire room. Olivia glanced toward the wide doors at the far end of the chamber. The golden light from the throne continued to pulse gently behind her, casting long shadows across the stone walls. The gathered vampires stepped back respectfully, forming a clear path across the floor. Then the doors opened, and a tall figure entered the throne chamber. King Adrian Night Vale had arrived. The moment King Adrian Night Vale stepped into the throne chamber, the entire room changed. The air itself seemed to grow colder, as if the palace recognized the presence of its true ruler. Every vampire in the hall lowered their gaze or stepped back respectfully, creating a wide path that led directly to the ancient throne. Olivia Hayes had never seen this man before, yet the authority surrounding him was unmistakable. He was tall and carried himself with a calm confidence that made everyone else in the room seem smaller. His dark coat moved gently with each step across the marble floor, and his eyes held a quiet intensity that felt older than the palace walls themselves. The golden light from the throne reflected faintly across his face as he approached. For several seconds no one spoke. The gathered nobles waited for the king to take in the scene before him. A human waitress standing beside the throne, the ancient runes glowing with power, and the entire vampire court frozen in confusion. King Adrian stopped several feet from the throne and slowly looked at the glowing symbols carved into the stone. His expression remained calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the ancient runes. "The throne has awakened," he said in a low voice that carried easily across the chamber. It was not a question. Lord Victor Harrow stepped forward and bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, my king." The throne reacted the moment this human sat upon it. A quiet murmur spread through the nobles again, but no one dared interrupt the exchange. King Adrian turned his attention toward Olivia Hayes for the first time. His gaze moved over her simple black uniform, the tray cloth still tied at her waist, the nervous way she held her hands together in front of her. She looked nothing like the powerful figures who normally stood within the king's court. She looked like exactly what she was, a tired waitress who had wandered into a place she did not belong. Olivia felt the weight of his attention immediately. She had never been the center of attention in a room before, yet now the most powerful person in the palace was studying her as if she were the answer to a question no one else could solve. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Her voice sounded smaller than she expected in the enormous chamber. "I did not know this was your throne. I only sat down because I was tired. I will leave right away." She took a careful step backward away from the throne. The reaction was immediate. The golden runes flared brighter across the surface of the stone, and a soft vibration moved through the floor again. Several nobles gasped in alarm. The guard stepped forward instinctively, but stopped when the king lifted one hand slightly. "Do not move," King Adrian said calmly. His voice held quiet authority, and the entire room obeyed without hesitation. Olivia froze where she stood. The glow from the throne slowly settled again into its steady pulse. King Adrian looked back toward the ancient seat behind her. His expression had changed only slightly, yet something thoughtful now rested in his gaze. "The throne has not awakened like this for centuries," he said. Lord Harrow nodded. "Once. That is true, my king. The ancient records say the throne only reacts when it senses something connected to the destiny of the Night Vale crown." King Adrian remained silent for several moments. Then he looked back toward Olivia Hayes. For a long time neither of them spoke. The quiet tension inside the throne chamber grew heavier with every passing second as the vampire court waited for their king to decide what this impossible event meant. The throne chamber remained locked in heavy silence as the golden glow from the ancient stone continued to pulse slowly behind Olivia Hayes. Every vampire in the room waited for their king to speak, yet King Adrian Nightvale did not rush his decision. Instead, he watched the human waitress standing beside his throne as if he were studying a puzzle that had existed for centuries. Olivia felt her heartbeat growing louder inside her chest. The attention of the entire court pressed down on her like a weight. She had never imagined that one simple mistake could lead her into the center of something so strange and dangerous. "I truly did not know this was your throne," she said again quietly. "I work as a waitress. I was hired for the gala tonight. I only stepped away from the ballroom because my feet hurt and I needed a moment to sit. If I have broken one of your laws, I am sorry. I will leave the palace right now if you allow it." King Adrian listened without interrupting. His eyes remained steady on her face, searching for something deeper than the words she spoke. Around them the vampire nobles whispered uneasily. Many of them had already formed their own conclusions about what should happen next. A human had violated the most sacred rule of the throne chamber. For centuries, the punishment for touching the king's throne without permission had always been the same: death. One of the nobles finally stepped forward from the gathered crowd. He was a tall vampire with sharp features and pale blonde hair tied neatly behind his neck. His name was Lord Cashenvale, and he was known throughout the court for his strict loyalty to ancient traditions. "My king," Lord Cashen said with a respectful bow of his head, "the laws of the court are very clear. No outsider may sit upon the throne of Night Vale. The punishment for such an offense has always been immediate execution." A tense murmur of agreement moved through several of the other nobles. They watched the king carefully, waiting to see if he would follow the same ancient law that had guided the vampire clans for generations. Olivia felt the words like a cold blade against her skin. Execution. The reality of her situation finally settled in her mind. She had not simply embarrassed herself in front of wealthy strangers. She had accidentally broken a law that might cost her life. King Adrian slowly turned his gaze toward Lord Cashin. The throne has already reacted to her presence, he said calmly. The golden runes still glow behind her. Lord Cashin frowned slightly. That may be true, my king, but the throne does not change the law. If anything, it proves that this human has disturbed powers she does not understand. The safest course for the court would be to remove her immediately before the throne reacts again. Several guards shifted their weight as if preparing to follow the command the moment the king gave it. Olivia swallowed quietly. She did not try to run. There was nowhere to run inside a palace filled with creatures who moved faster than any human. Instead, she stood where she was and forced herself to meet the king's gaze. If you must punish someone, then punish me, she said softly. But please understand that I never meant to disrespect your throne. I only wanted to rest for a minute. The throne behind her pulsed again with a quiet flash of golden light. The glow spread briefly across the marble floor before fading back into its steady rhythm. A deeper silence filled the chamber after that moment. King Adrian looked from the glowing throne to the human waitress standing beside it. Then he spoke in a voice so calm that it silenced every whisper in the hall. No one will harm her. The words shocked the entire court. Even Lord Cashin lifted his head in surprise. The king's gaze moved slowly across the gathered nobles. The throne of Night Vale has spoken tonight, King Adrian said quietly, and I intend to discover why. The words of King Adrian Night Vale echoed through the throne chamber, and for several long seconds no one moved. The statement had been clear and final. No one will harm her. Yet the tension in the room did not fade. If anything, it grew heavier as the vampire nobles struggled to accept what their king had just declared. Lord Cashin Vale stepped forward again, his expression tight with concern. My king, he said carefully, I understand your curiosity about the throne reacting, but the laws of the court exist to protect the stability of our kind. A human has touched the throne and awakened its ancient power. Allowing her to remain here could place the entire palace at risk. Several other nobles nodded in agreement. Their whispers began to rise again, quiet but urgent. The throne is sacred. The throne cannot be disturbed by outsiders. This human should never have been allowed inside the throne chamber. Olivia Hayes stood in the center of their attention, feeling smaller with every word spoken about her. She understood now that she had walked into a world ruled by traditions older than anything she had ever known. These creatures lived by laws written long before the cities outside the palace had even existed. King Adrian did not respond immediately to the growing arguments. Instead, he walked slowly toward the throne. His long coat brushed softly against the marble floor as he approached the ancient stone seat. The golden symbols continued to glow across its surface like quiet embers. He placed one hand gently on the armrest of the throne. The moment his skin touched the stone, the golden light shifted slightly, as if recognizing the presence of its true ruler. A ripple of awe moved through the nobles watching him. The throne always responded to the blood of the Night Vale king. That was expected. But tonight the throne had awakened before he even entered the chamber. King Adrian studied the glowing runes for several seconds before turning his gaze back toward Olivia Hayes. What is your full name? He asked calmly. Olivia hesitated for a moment, surprised by the question. Olivia Hayes, she answered. I live outside the city near the old highway diner. I was only hired tonight to help serve the guests. Lord Cashin frowned. My king, this is unnecessary. Her name changes nothing about the laws she has broken. King Adrian looked toward him with calm patience. Perhaps not, he said, but the throne has already shown interest in her presence. That alone makes her situation different from any other human who has entered this chamber. The murmurs among the nobles grew louder. Some looked uneasy while others appeared openly displeased. One noblewoman spoke from the back of the gathering. If the throne truly senses something in her, then we must be cautious. Humans cannot be trusted with the secrets of our court. She could reveal what she has seen tonight to the outside world. The concern spread quickly through the crowd. Several nobles began speaking at once about secrecy and safety. The vampire clans had hidden their existence from human society for centuries. Allowing a human witness to leave the palace after seeing the throne awaken could be dangerous. Olivia listened to the arguments with growing fear. She had no intention of telling anyone about what she had seen tonight. Most people would never believe her anyway. But the nobles speaking around her sounded convinced that the safest solution would be to make sure she never left the palace alive. King Adrian raised his hand slightly, and the chamber fell silent again. The decision has already been made, he said firmly. She will not be harmed. Lord Cassian looked troubled but lowered his head respectfully. As you command, my king. King Adrian then turned toward Olivia once more. Until we understand why the throne responded to you, he said calmly. You will remain here in Night Vale Palace under my protection. The words left the entire court stunned. A human waitress who had accidentally sat on the throne of the vampire king would now remain inside the palace itself. And no one in the chamber could predict what the throne might do next. The throne chamber remained silent long after King Adrian Nightvale announced that Olivia Hayes would remain inside the palace under his protection. The nobles standing throughout the hall looked at one another with expressions that ranged from disbelief to quiet concern. A human waitress had not only touched the throne but had also awakened it. And now their king had chosen to keep her inside the very heart of the vampire court. Olivia felt the weight of those stares pressing against her from every direction. She had never imagined that her life could change so suddenly within the span of a single evening. Only hours earlier she had been pouring coffee for travelers at a highway diner. Now she stood inside a palace surrounded by creatures who had lived for centuries. I do not want to cause problems for anyone, Olivia said softly as she looked toward the king. If it would make things easier, I can leave and promise that I will never speak about what happened tonight. King Adrian studied her carefully. His expression remained calm but thoughtful. The problem is not what you might say outside these walls, he replied. The problem is that the throne itself reacted to you. Until we understand why that happened, your safety and the safety of this court are connected. Lord Cassian stepped forward again, his voice controlled but firm. My king, even if we accept your decision to protect her, the court must still consider the risk. Humans are fragile and unpredictable. If word spreads that a human awakened the throne, it could create chaos among the clans. King Adrian nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the concern. Which is why this matter will remain within this chamber until we learn the truth, he said. No one in this court will speak of what happened tonight without my permission. The authority in his voice ended the discussion immediately. None of the nobles dared to challenge him further. Instead, they lowered their heads in quiet acceptance of the order. King Adrian then turned toward Olivia once more. You will remain here in the palace for now, he said. My staff will provide a room and anything you may need. You will not be treated as a prisoner. But you will not leave until I understand why the throne responded to you. Olivia hesitated before answering. Part of her wanted to run from this strange and dangerous world as fast as possible. But she knew that escape was impossible. The palace was filled with guards who could move faster than any human. And the king standing before her was offering protection in a situation where others clearly wanted her gone forever. All right, she said quietly. I will stay if that is what you ask. A faint shift of relief moved through the room, although many of the nobles still looked uneasy. The throne behind her continued to glow softly, its golden runes pulsing like distant embers. King Adrian glanced at it once more before speaking again. Lord Harrow, he said, have the court records brought to the royal library tonight. I want every reference to the throne and its ancient enchantments reviewed before sunrise. Lord Harrow bowed his head. It will be done, my king. Then King Adrian looked back toward Olivia Hayes. His voice softened slightly, though it still carried the quiet strength of command. There is one more thing we must try before the night ends, he said. The throne awakened when you sat upon it. I need to know what will happen if you touch it again. The words sent a ripple of tension through the chamber. Olivia turned slowly to look at the glowing throne behind her. The stone seat that had caused all of this now seemed far more intimidating than it had when she first sat down in exhaustion. The nobles watched her closely, every eye in the room fixed on the moment that would reveal whether the throne of Night Vale had truly chosen to awaken for a human waitress. The throne chamber fell into a deeper silence after King Adrian Nightvale spoke those final words. Every noble in the room understood what he was asking. The ancient throne had already awakened once in response to Olivia Hayes. Now the king wanted to see if the reaction would happen again. Olivia slowly turned to face the throne behind her. Just minutes earlier it had seemed like nothing more than a large stone chair placed inside a quiet room. Now it felt like the center of a mystery that stretched back through centuries of vampire history. The golden runes carved into the black stone continued to glow faintly, like quiet embers beneath the surface. She could feel the eyes of the entire court watching her every movement. Olivia hesitated. "I do not know if this is a good idea," she said softly while looking toward the king. King Adrian met her gaze calmly. "Neither do I," he replied. "But we must understand what the throne is trying to tell us." Around the chamber the nobles remained perfectly still. Some of them looked curious. Others looked deeply uneasy. Lord Cashin watched with folded arms, clearly prepared for the possibility that the throne might react violently again. Olivia took a slow breath and stepped closer to the ancient seat. The marble floor felt cold beneath her shoes. The golden light reflected faintly across the polished stone around her feet. When she reached the throne, she stopped again. The runes etched into the armrests seemed even more intricate up close. The symbols twisted together like a language older than any book she had ever seen. She looked back once more at King Adrian. "Are you sure you want me to do this?" she asked quietly. The king nodded once. "Yes." Olivia lifted one hand slowly and placed her palm against the cold surface of the armrest. For one brief second nothing happened. Then the throne awakened again. The golden runes blazed with sudden brightness across the entire structure. Light spread across the black stone like a wave of fire. A deep vibration rolled outward through the throne chamber and across the marble floor. Several nobles gasped in shock. Even the guards stepped back instinctively. The reaction was stronger than before. The golden light did not remain confined to the throne. It spread outward along the floor in thin, glowing lines that traced ancient patterns across the chamber. The symbols formed a wide circle around Olivia and the throne itself. Olivia pulled her hand away in alarm, but the light did not fade. Instead it grew brighter. The glowing runes pulsed once more like the heartbeat of something long asleep. Lord Harrow stared in amazement. "This has not happened in centuries," he whispered. "The throne is recognizing her again." Lord Cashin shook his head in disbelief. "That is impossible. A human cannot be connected to the throne of Night Vale." King Adrian remained perfectly still as he watched the ancient magic unfold before him. His eyes moved carefully across the glowing patterns forming around the throne. The symbols were not random. They were part of a ritual design older than the palace itself. Olivia suddenly felt a strange warmth spreading through her palm where it had touched the stone. She looked down at her hand and saw a faint golden mark appearing against her skin. It was not painful. The symbol shimmered briefly like a reflection of the runes glowing across the throne. The nobles noticed it immediately. One of them spoke in a stunned whisper. "The throne has marked her." A heavy silence fell across the chamber after those words. The glowing symbol on Olivia's hand slowly faded, but the memory of it remained clear in every mind watching. King Adrian took one step closer to the throne. His voice was calm, but filled with quiet certainty. "The throne has not simply awakened for her," he said. "It has chosen her for a reason." The golden light inside the throne chamber slowly began to settle after the symbol appeared on Olivia Hay's hand, but the tension in the room did not fade. In fact, the silence that followed felt even heavier than before. Every vampire present understood that something extraordinary had just happened. The ancient throne of Night Vale had not only awakened for a human, it had marked her. Olivia stared down at her hand in disbelief. The faint golden symbol had already faded from her skin, yet she could still feel the warmth where it had appeared only moments earlier. "I did not do anything," she said quietly, looking from the throne to the nobles surrounding her. "I only touched the armrest like you asked." Lord Harrow stepped closer, his eyes filled with astonishment. "The throne does not mark someone without reason," he said slowly. "In all the centuries of our court, there are only a few records of such a thing ever happening." Lord Cashin immediately shook his head. "Those records refer to heirs of the royal bloodline," he argued. "Members of the Night Vale family who were destined to rule. This human cannot possibly belong to that lineage." The gathered nobles began whispering again. Some looked fearful. Others looked fascinated. The idea that a human waitress might somehow be connected to the ancient throne challenged everything they believed about their history. King Adrian Night Vale remained calm as he watched the fading glow across the throne. His eyes moved thoughtfully between the ancient runes and the young woman standing beside the seat of power. The throne responded twice, he said quietly. Once when she sat upon it, and again when she touched it. That is not coincidence. Lord Harrow nodded in agreement. The throne responds to bloodlines, destiny, and power bound by ancient magic. If it marked her, then there must be a reason hidden in the past. Olivia looked confused by the conversation unfolding around her. I do not understand any of this, she said. My family has lived in the same small town for generations. We are ordinary people. My mother worked at a grocery store, and my father repaired cars. There is nothing royal about us. King Adrian considered her words carefully. That may be true from your perspective, he said. But the throne recognizes something beyond simple appearances. The throne was forged through ancient rituals when the first Night Vale king united the vampire clans. It was bound to forces older than our written records. Lord Cashin crossed his arms. My king, even if the throne sensed something unusual, that does not mean she should remain here. The court must protect the stability of the clans. Allowing a human connected to the throne could create dangerous questions among our people. Several nobles nodded quietly. The idea of change unsettled them. The vampire clans had followed the same traditions for centuries. King Adrian turned toward them with calm authority. The stability of our clans depends on understanding the truth, he replied. Ignoring what the throne has revealed tonight would be far more dangerous. The chamber grew silent again as the nobles absorbed his words. Finally, Lord Harrow spoke once more. The ancient library may hold answers, he said. There are scrolls written by the first royal historians who witnessed the throne being created. If there is any explanation for what happened tonight, it will be hidden there. King Adrian nodded slowly. Then that is where we begin. He turned back toward Olivia Hayes. Until we discover the truth, you will remain under my protection inside this palace. What happened tonight may have awakened forces that neither of us fully understand. Olivia looked around the vast throne chamber, filled with ancient vampires and glowing stone symbols. Her ordinary life had vanished in a single night. And now the throne of the vampire king had tied her fate to a mystery buried deep within centuries of forgotten history. The throne chamber slowly returned to a quiet stillness after the intense glow of the ancient runes faded from the black stone seat. The golden light that had filled the room moments earlier now remained only as a faint shimmer along the carved symbols of the throne. The nobles of the vampire court still stood in stunned silence, each of them struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. Olivia Hayes remained beside the throne, her heart still beating faster than normal as she tried to steady her breathing. The warmth that had once appeared in her hand was gone, yet the memory of the glowing symbol remained vivid in her mind. She looked down at her palm again as if expecting the mark to reappear, but her skin showed nothing unusual. King Adrian Nightvale stepped closer to her, his calm presence bringing a sense of control. Back to the chamber. Up close, his expression no longer held the cold distance of a ruler addressing his court. Instead, there was a thoughtful curiosity in his eyes, as if he were studying the turning point of a story that had been waiting centuries to unfold. Olivia Hayes, he said quietly, tonight you stepped into this palace as a simple worker hired to serve drinks. Yet the throne of Night Vale has answered your presence twice and placed its mark upon you. That alone means your life has already changed. Olivia swallowed softly. I never wanted any of this, she admitted. I only wanted to finish my shift and return home before midnight. King Adrian gave a faint nod of understanding. Most turning points in history arrive without warning, he replied. The difference is how we respond when they appear. Around them, the nobles of the court began slowly dispersing into smaller groups, speaking in hushed voices as they tried to interpret the events of the evening. Some looked fearful of what the throne might be signaling. Others looked almost hopeful, as if they believed the ancient seat of power had awakened for a purpose that could shape the future of the clans. Lord Harrow approached once more and bowed his head respectfully to the king. My king, the royal library is being prepared. The oldest scrolls concerning the throne and the founding of the Night Vale dynasty will be brought forward tonight. King Adrian nodded. Good. We begin searching immediately. If the throne has revealed a connection to this human, then the truth must exist somewhere in our earliest records. Lord Harrow glanced briefly at Olivia before speaking again. Should the court be dismissed for the night? King Adrian considered the room, filled with uneasy nobles. Yes, he said. The gathering ends now. No one is to discuss what occurred here outside the palace walls. Until we understand the meaning of this event, it remains a matter for the royal court alone. The nobles bowed respectfully before leaving the chamber one by one. Within minutes, the once crowded hall had grown quiet again, leaving only the king, Lord Harrow, several guards, and Olivia standing beside the ancient throne. The silence felt different now, less tense, more uncertain. Olivia looked around the enormous chamber with its towering pillars and shadowed ceilings. Only hours earlier she had been worrying about tips at a highway diner. Now she stood in the center of a palace older than most cities. I still feel like I do not belong here, she said quietly. King Adrian looked at the throne behind her, its ruins now resting in darkness once more. Perhaps you did not belong here before tonight, he replied. But the throne believes otherwise. He turned his attention back to Olivia with a calm expression that carried both authority and reassurance. Come with me, he said. There is much we need to learn before the night is over. Olivia hesitated only briefly before following him across the vast marble floor. Behind them, the ancient throne of Night Vale remained silent again. Yet every person who had witnessed its awakening knew that the events of this night had already begun to reshape the destiny of the vampire king and the human waitress who had unknowingly sat upon his throne. The quiet halls of Night Vale Palace were illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight, as King Adrian Night Vale led Olivia Hayes through a long corridor lined with ancient portraits. Each painting showed rulers of the vampire clans from centuries past, their calm expressions watching silently as the king and the human waitress walked beneath them. Olivia felt small in that hallway, as if she were passing through the memories of a world that had existed long before she was born. Eventually they reached the royal library, a vast chamber filled with towering shelves of ancient books and scrolls. Lord Harrow and several attendants had already begun laying out large leather-bound volumes across a long stone table. The pages were yellow with age and written in languages so old that even many vampires could no longer read them without study. King Adrian moved to the center of the room and began examining the oldest scrolls with careful attention. Hours passed as the king and Lord Harrow searched through records that had not been opened for generations. Olivia sat quietly nearby, still struggling to accept the reality of everything that had happened that night. The throne had awakened when she touched it. A symbol had appeared on her hand, and now the king himself was searching centuries of history to understand why. Finally, Lord Harrow lifted a fragile scroll with sudden realization in his eyes. My king, he said quietly, I believe we have found something. King Adrian stepped closer as the old historian carefully unfolded the delicate parchment. The faded ink revealed a record written by the earliest royal scholars who had witnessed the creation of the throne of Night Vale. The throne was not only bound to the blood of the kings. It was also bound to a guardian line of humans chosen long ago to protect the balance between the vampire clans and the human world. According to the ancient record, when the throne sensed the return of that human bloodline, it would awaken and mark the one who carried it. King Adrian slowly looked toward Olivia Hayes as the meaning of the text became clear. Your family may not know it, he said calmly, but your bloodline once protected the throne itself. The throne recognized that connection when you sat upon it tonight. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. My family never mentioned anything like that. Lord Harrow nodded thoughtfully. Many centuries have passed since the guardian line was last recorded. It is possible the truth was simply lost through generations. The king closed the ancient scroll and considered the information in silence for several moments. Then he turned toward Olivia once more. The throne did not awaken by accident, he said. It recognized you as part of the ancient balance between our worlds. That means your presence here is not a mistake. It is destiny. Olivia felt the weight of those words settle around her. The life she had known only a day ago now seemed impossibly distant. Yet she also realized something else. For the first time that night, she no longer felt like an intruder inside the palace. King Adrian stepped closer, and his voice softened slightly. You came here as a waitress looking for a place to rest. Instead, the throne revealed a truth hidden for centuries. The vampire court now knows that a guardian has returned. Olivia looked around the ancient library filled with records of the past, and slowly nodded. If my family really has a role in protecting this balance, she said quietly, then I will learn everything I need to do it properly. A faint smile appeared on the king's face for the first time that night. Then Night Vale Palace will become your home while you learn the truth of your heritage. And together we will protect the future that the throne has chosen. Outside the palace windows, the first light of morning began to rise across the distant hills, marking the end of the night when a poor waitress accidentally sat on the throne of the vampire king and awakened a destiny that would shape both of their worlds forever.